Senator Paterson, you have the call.
Thank you. Welcome, Director General. Welcome, Ms Bradshaw. I want to start with some questions about REDSPICE, and I just flag for the Chair's benefit in terms of time management. I have a number of questions, but I'll be guided by you how you would like me to break that up, and if you want to share the call with one of the senators, I'll understand. But I want to start with Project REDSPICE, which is obviously funded in the March budget under the previous government to a tune of $9.9 billion over the next decade. Firstly, Director General, can you just confirm that in this budget in October that there were no cuts or reductions or in any way repurposing any of that funding for ASD?
That's correct. There were no cuts.
Thank you. And obviously the previous government recognised the importance of the capabilities that ASD will be able to require thanks to this investment. I've been pleased to see statements by the Prime Minister and the Defence Minister which echo that recognition. In particular on the weekend in Greg Sheridan's article, the Prime Minister recognised the importance of offensive cyber capabilities, and the Defence Minister has a number of times recognised that. How important is it to being able to deliver that capability that both governments have asked of ASD, that for the remainder of the REDSPICE program, that all of that $9.9 billion is delivered in full without any cuts, without it being repurposed for any other purpose?
Well, I think as having been the agency and the agency head who put the business case, if you like, to the former government, we obviously believe very strongly that the measures set out in REDSPICE are important for the cyber security of the nation, the cyber defence of the nation, our ability to have cyber offensive capabilities and the important signals intelligence to support that. And as you pointed out, both the Deputy Prime Minister and the Prime Minister are on the public record as fully supporting REDSPICE.
And let's just step through it just in a little bit of detail. The offensive cyber investment that's going to occur under REDSPICE, talk about why that's important.
Well, it becomes an important part of a deterrence strategy, just like other military hard power that a government might ask the Department of Defence or ADF to procure. The first part of that is to help our adversaries understand that we have a capability and we are willing to use it. And that's an important part of a deterrence calculation, that if the adversary believes that the cost to themselves might not outweigh the benefit of a cyber attack, say, against Australia, then it changes their calculation. That's an important part of deterrence. But also the capability in itself is important to us as a nation. Firstly, actually, as I've sort of set out, in a military sort of construct, it becomes an important part of our capability to defend ourselves, but to also strike back, just like in the same logic that governments buy missiles, for example. But in cyberspace, it's an important deterrence, and it is an important tool that we operationalise often against cyber criminals.
Also part of the REDSPICE program is increased investment in the signals intelligence capability of ASD. In a modern world, in a connected world with all of our devices, signals intelligence is an increasingly important way for government to get an insight into what our potential adversaries are doing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And the three are a continuum, if you like, managed within the Australian Signals Directorate. So Abby is really awesome at defending our country in cyberspace because she's enabled by classified signals intelligence that not only ASD itself generates, but that our Five Eyes partners generate for us.
And the third major component, the defensive component, I mean, it's kind of self-evident after the last few weeks that we've had why defensive cyber capabilities are important, but just for the record, can you illustrate why that investment in ASD, which will flow through to ACSC, is important?
Well, the intelligence certainly helps us understand, I guess, how to prioritise our work in some respects. So we can see through our intelligence apertures the threats coming at us, which then inform and assist Abby not only to repackage that intelligence as we do, and then share it with the private sector through some of the platforms that are funded under both CSER Plus and, in due course, REDSPICE, such as the Cyber Threat Intelligence Sharing Platform, which is well underway, and we have some fantastic Australian companies doing bi-directional threat sharing with us. So it's not just us sharing with them, they're sharing back machine to machine and at machine speed. Yeah. And in some cases, some of our customers are receiving at the moment and working towards bi-directional sharing. That's really just one example of how that intelligence then can inform both ourselves, our government customers, but importantly our private sector customers about where to look and where to strengthen their shields in a prioritised order. But also we use that intelligence and insight to inform the public advice that we put out for small businesses and individuals in the form of step-by-step guides to help them understand how to set their phones or their computer at home with the strongest possible settings.
Thank you. And if I have time later in the Chair's indulgence, I might come back to the CEDIS platform and how that's going. But just to kind of sum up this part of the conversation, it would make your task more difficult in delivering these really important capabilities for our country if the REDSPICE program in any future budget was cut, or perhaps if the funding was reprioritised within the defence portfolio to fund other projects, or perhaps within the national intelligence community to fund other projects, wouldn't it? If that funding was reduced, it would be a harder task for you.
I guess that would be true of any government program that is funded, but of course it's a government's prerogative to make different decisions or prioritise things differently based on their understanding of the threat environment and their own priorities or prerogatives. Certainly at this stage, REDSPICE is full steam ahead from our perspective.
Great. And look, I really welcome that. And certainly from the opposition's point of view, we think it's very important that it is delivered in full, and we'll be watching closely in upcoming budgets to make sure that's the case. Moving on to some of the kind of implementation of REDSPICE, one of the big challenges that you'll have to do is to find the people to do the work. Can you give the committee an update on how you're going in recruiting to have that very significant uplift in the number of people you employ?
Certainly can, and I'm very proud, of course, of ASD and my people, because we are fortunate that ASD itself remains a very attractive employer, and we finished the financial year 21-22 with a headcount that was 107% of our target for the previous financial year. We have had over 600 new staff onboarded in the 21-22 financial year, and we received over 9,000 applications for jobs in 21-22, and about 4,300 of those, or about 50%, were received post the REDSPICE announcement. So it certainly has lifted ASD's attractiveness as an employer. We have, after so far this year, after accounting for attrition, filled 189 of our REDSPICE positions. So 4 months into the REDSPICE program starting, we've already hit about just under 50% of the target for this year, so that's exciting. And that includes cybersecurity specialists, data specialists, linguists, analysts, ICT and engineering specialists, as well as 25% in the enabling skill sets, which are really important to us, especially as we're sort of ramping up REDSPICE. So human resources, people who can recruit people, psychologists, of course, security people, compliance people, our legal team and our communications team. So we've made a good start.
Yeah. So recruitment's obviously one half of the challenge. The other half is retention. Right. We're obviously all operating in a highly competitive employment market, and the skills which you are often seeking are highly sought after skills in private industry as well. How is ASD performing on retention of existing staff?
We're doing really well. So ASD's separation rate as at 30 June 2022 was 9.8%. That compares with the whole of the Australian Public Service separation rate of 13.4%. So we still are an attractive employer, and our people are very passionate about the mission of ASD, and it's a great gift to us that our people therefore wish to stay with us. It doesn't mean that we don't work at those issues, and we have a lot of other policies that are important to modern workers, such as a family-friendly environment, support for parents, and other initiatives where we'll try to maintain that edge as an employer that people want to stick with.
What are the most critical skills that ASD seeks that are the most scarce in the marketplace? What are the highly sought after ones?
Data sciences, they're probably the most challenging, but our opportunity now under REDSPICE to stand up significant workforces in Melbourne and Brisbane will give us a new opportunity that we've not had for 30 years to tap into bigger populations in those cities. And Melbourne in particular, is some of their universities are particularly well known for data scientists. So we're working with some of those institutes and universities to develop a partnership arrangement where we can try to offer undergrads the opportunity to work for ASD over the summer, for example, and increase our chances that at the end of their degree they will choose ASD as an employer.
Great. Obviously, a unique challenge that you face as an employer, distinct from private sector competitors, is the need to clear staff, to vet them appropriately. What's the current average timeline for vetting staff before they join ASD?
I might ask for some help from Mr. First if he's got the top secret clearance processes, but we are trying to transform the way that we work at ASD, and our new building at Majura Park in Canberra is a great example where we've built those physical spaces to be separated. So there is some space for top secret cleared people, some for secret and some for below secret. And we've recently changed our employment policies to allow people to join ASD as a permanent employee with a lower clearance level. So they can start working with us, start building their skills, access training and development opportunities, whilst also getting their security clearance, so that wait and that gap where we have in the past perhaps lost people out of the pipeline, for want of a sort of better explanation, is something that we're able to remove by changing the way that we work and repackaging our work so people can do meaningful analytical work, fighting cyber criminals. We do that at a lower classification level and really start to develop their ASD skills while their clearance is underway. But I don't know whether, Mr. First, you wanted to add to that in terms of...
Sure. Senator Dale Furse, Chief Operating Officer for ASD. I don't have the exact timeframes on the PV clearance rates at the moment, but I can say, based on our experience, is that it is moving quite smoothly based on what we're seeing in terms of the numbers coming into the organisation. We have reached a memorandum of understanding with AGSFA in relation to the clearances, which was part of the proposal for REDSPICE, and that is enabling us to put more people into that clearance pipeline. We are also using what the Director General just described as we are putting people through ideally the first level of clearance, which is the baseline, providing meaningful work and getting them in the door, and then while they're in the organisation, moving them to a higher clearance, and that is also helping us.
Yeah, look, that seems very sensible to me. Perhaps you can come back on notice for those average times for baseline, NV1, NV2 and PV, just so the committee has a picture. Director General, you mentioned in your previous answer the decentralisation of ASD away from Canberra to regional cities. I'm interested in how that's going, particularly the new facilities that you're building. I understand it's Perth, Melbourne and Brisbane are the main ones. Have I missed any?
That's absolutely right. So the buildings are well underway. We have signed heads of agreement for all 3 locations. So these are the buildings that will become our permanent buildings that will ultimately have top secret protected facilities in them. In the meantime, because in the case of Brisbane and Melbourne, they will be big and they won't be completely fitted out for us to move into until 2024, 2025 timeframe. We are also in the process of leasing, if you like, interim facilities for Brisbane and Melbourne for up to protected level workers. So as Mr First described, it's a pipeline for us, and those buildings will be available next year.
Okay, great. Perhaps to save time, come back to me on notice with just the timelines for each of those 3 builds, those ones that you're doing, of the new facilities in
Certainly.
Brisbane, Melbourne and Perth. Chair, that concludes my questions on REDSPICE.